Chapter 6 and Chapter 5 is traditionally known as international security. So the stuff that is contained in Chapter 5, 6, those are traditional international security stuff. So once you study approaches, realist approaches, liberal approaches or postmodernist approaches, normally that's how IR begins. Then once you learn these approaches, theories, paradigms, then you move on to international security, right? Where these tanks, weapons, right? Insurgency, wars, these are the stuff you study. Then international organization. International, that's another field. But in one of the chapters, broadly speaking, there are two subfields. That's what the textbook says. International security and IPE. In other words, either military issues or economic issues. That's how the textbook says how IR is broadly divided, but there are some other additional subfields, like international organization, right? You study, under which you study the UN, international law, human rights, which is an important field, human rights particularly. Then after these, we'll move to IPE issues, international political economy issues, like international trade, world trade, global finance, or climate change, energy issues. That's what's left. Ibrahim Hibak, according to that journal, SCT. SCT is a fine journal, the top journal in that field, studies in conflict cooperation, conflict and terrorism, which is published by Georgetown. That journal is published by Georgetown. Georgetown is known for that. So you read that article, right? You read that article. Then let me ask you some questions. What is the difference between, according to that article, what's the difference between terrorism and insurgency? I forgot to bring my article, so I'm just talking off the top of my head. But you might have had, you have that article in front of you. What's the difference between insurgency and terrorism? That's there's a Chechnya. What's the difference? Whisker Rendry, what's the difference? Go ahead.
Terrorism is more ideology of political.
What? Speak up, please.
Ideology of political.
Which one?
Terrorism.
Terrorism is more ideology and political? Then what is insurgency? That is what? Insurgency. It's violent conflicts, right? People's deaths involved, right? Violent conflict. It's a violent conflict where there is a asymmetry, right? There's asymmetry. A group or groups like a challenge the incumbent government. That's insurgency, right? So group or groups challenge the incumbent government. That's insurgency. In other words, technically, civil war, right? It's a civil war. Civil war is asymmetrical war, which is one of the most frequently seen wars today. Terrorism. What is terrorism? 한현지. The reason why this article begins with that definitional section, right? why this article thinks that to begin with this definitional problem is important is that there is confusion, right? There is a widespread confusion over these two types of wars. I begin with saying that terrorism and insurgency is one of the two modern warfares, right? Two outstanding modern warfares. These are two modern warfares, right? It's not total war. These two wars are most frequent modern warfares, insurgency and terrorism. So that's why it's important. But definition is important because there is widespread confusion. There's widespread confusion over these two different modern warfares, right? So it's important from the beginning, important to distinguish them. What is and what is not. Because there is confusion. Why confusion is dangerous, right? I'm saying that confusion over these two different modern warfares is very dangerous. Because by mistaking it for something else, you run the risk of, you take the risk of many wrongdoings as a government. So it's important to distinguish them. What is not. Terrorism, I think the most outstanding character of terrorism is indiscriminate killing. Insurgency doesn't do that. Insurgency doesn't do that. Although insurgency adopts as a technique, as a strategy, they adopt sometimes terrorism. But terrorism, indiscriminate killing in terms of the use of force, right, is the outstanding character of terrorism. So terrorism is kind of a tool. Terrorism is a tool. And insurgency is much broader than terrorism. Broader than terrorism. Now, insurgency, many studies imply insurgency and terrorism has different origins. Different origins. Insurgency has origins in some legitimate things. Okay? Legitimate things, legitimate causes, such as national independence. National independence. Or corruption in the central government. They rebel against some wrongdoings done by the central government. Powerful people. So insurgency in and of itself is not a bad thing. They might fight for some good things. So in so doing, they might adopt terrorism as a tool. Okay? But terrorism, on the other hand, terrorism doesn't have these kinds of underlying causes. Okay? They don't have legitimate underlying causes. Killing is, how to say, killing is the purpose. Again, although this is a little bit Western centered definition. You know, if you equate terrorism with Al-Qaeda, okay? Al-Qaeda is one of terrorist groups. If you equate terrorism with Al-Qaeda, then those Al-Qaeda terrorist groups come out and saying, well, we have legitimate, arguments there, okay? Because we are disadvantaged by Western religion, Western people. So a little bit Western-centered definition. But let's adopt this. Okay, let's adopt this. Now, then having done this definition, having given this definition, then there's a confusion, right? There's confusion over these two different words. Confusion is dangerous because by confusing these two different warfares, we subscribe to different countermeasures, right? That's the real danger part, countermeasures. So as a countermeasure, we need to adopt right countermeasures, right? Right countermeasures. In other words, for terrorism, we need to adopt counter-terrorist countermeasures. For insurgency, we need to adopt counterinsurgency countermeasures, which is COIN. So either COIN or CT or CTO. But because we confuse between these two warfares, we adopt wrong countermeasures in many cases. For instance, for insurgency, many governments adopt CT. For terrorism, many governments adopt COIN. That's what's happening. So that terrorism continues. Number one, terrorism continues. Second, insurgency transforms into terrorism. This is what's important. Insurgency, more importantly, insurgency transforms into terrorism. Not transforms, actually, insurgency is abetted by terrorism. Insurgency, terrorism become one thing because of these wrong countermeasures. So, you need to apply these conceptual theories. These are theories, these are concepts to different warfares, modern warfares, including Afghanistan. So there, as a case, you need to figure out whether groups there are terrorists or insurgents. So then having done that, you need to move on to ask then the countermeasures America was pushing for. Was the US policy COIN or CT? These are the questions you might want to ask. Or Iraqi situation, same thing. Our case is the case of Chechnya. I'm taking here the case of Chechnya. A little bit unknown, remote place, right? One of the republics within the Russian Federation. Now, 최승원, 한현지, your turn. You haven't said anything. 한현지, what's going on in Chechnya today? Who was 홍승영? Okay. 한현지, what's going on, Chechnya? Did terrorism or insurgency stop? We learned from last class that there were two wars. There were two wars. First war, 1994, 1996. Okay? 1996. Second war, 1999. It began again 1999 and lasted. The ending time a little bit confusing, but it lasted until 2004. 2004. Then what happened after that? What's the current state? the state of Chechnya. So all these terrorists killed so that peace set in? No problem? Russia retook Chechnya? Just one thing. I mean, one line is enough. Just one statement. Technically, the war ended. Technically, the war ended. Russia prevailed. But the war has spread into neighboring regions. The war, whatever, terrorist war or insurgency, the war has spread out into neighboring regions, many different neighboring regions. So even today, there are many people being killed by terrorists or by the combination of terrorists and insurgents. Many people, hundreds of people are being killed. So the war has not ended. But the Russian government has claimed that the war had ended there. Because, why? By Russian definition, the war there, the war in Chechnya was a terrorist war. It's not insurgent war. It was not insurgency by Russian definition. So from Russians' perspective, the war ended because terrorists were killed. Terrorists were hunted down and killed. But the war still goes on. In other words, the war has deeper underlying causes. So it's not a terrorist war, but maybe an insurgent war. Because the difference between terrorism and insurgency is that insurgency is supported by citizens. Right? Terrorist war is not supported by citizens. So that's how Russian government confused. That's how Russian government conflated terrorism with insurgency. That's the danger. So they applied wrong countermeasures. 정재준. I discuss the like a fusion of terrorism and insurgency in the Russian context. Then I argue how Russia applied the counter-terrorist operations, right? Counter-terrorist operation. Usually, Russia putting in a lot of Russian army troops, police, right? Then the main purpose was to hunt down and kill terrorists, right? And maybe Russia has done a good job in doing so, right? Then I move on to discuss Russia's counterinsurgency policy. Did you read that? No? 자르갈란. 임지연. I discuss what kind of counterinsurgency, coin policy Russia implemented. What kind of coin policy Russia implemented? There were things that, so the lesson of this article is that Russia has not solved the problem, right? Russia has not solved the problem. On the face of it, it seems that Russia, had solved the problem, but, right? So there are things that Russia really has to do. What are these things that Russia really has to do?
Because they couldn't distinguish between the counterinsurgency and
Counterinsurgency?
counterinsurgency and counter terrorist operation, they ended up like declaring the counter-terrorist operation, and this caused a big problem because without the strategic design for the coin campaign, they ended up having the terrorist operation.
In other words, coin alone, right? Coin alone doesn't root out the terrorist groups. Coin might encourage those because coin, as part of coin policy, you will give support to the local government. In other words, analogy could be taken from the Afghanistan case. U.S. coin policy was designed to give support to the Karzai government, the Afghanistan government. That's coin policy. But the problem with that is you give support to the Karzai government, but in so doing, naturally, you will, number one, postpone the war, right? Postpone the war, and terrorist groups might last. That was the problem with coin policy, U.S. coin policy. Same thing here, right? Okay, 이경화. Good. 윤술찬. What are the things that the U.S. government has? The Russian government has to do to eradicate the root cause of the war? Let me tell you this. There are two contending views on Chechnya, or probably on any war, on Afghanistan, or Iraq, or any type of modern sort of a fusion war, like one, terrorism, partly, and also insurgency. Two views. One view is insurgency/terrorism is caused by jihadis, Al-Qaeda jihadi group support. That's one view. Okay? This is one view. So if you take this view, then the policy you need to apply is that mobilizing whatever left, military forces, you need to hunt down and kill as many as terrorist, elements that might be hiding somewhere. This is actually what Obama was taking, the policy that Obama was taking. So jihadi group is really behind the war, insurgency/terrorist war. The second view is maybe jihadi group is behind it, but only in part. The real cause of this war is found in poverty and bad management, local bad management, corruption, misbehavior of elites, people's grievances, citizens' grievances. So citizens might support terrorists and jihadi group because they have grievances against the central government. So we need to get this problem right first. That's the second view. If you take the second view, the policy, the countermeasure, real countermeasure should be always, right? Real coin policy. Real coin policy. In other words, winning hearts and minds. That's what winning hearts and minds mean. So without winning hearts and minds, you never resolve. That's what Russia has failed to do. That's what comes as a last section in this article. In fact, Russia has done something, partly. Now, chapter 6. (209). The remaining chapter 6. WMD. 우동균. 오현정. Give us the difference between conventional weapons and weapons of mass destruction, which is WMD. Too broad? Let me narrow down to something. Like WMD, which is unconventional weapons. These are unconventional weapons, okay? WMD is a modern weapon, more contemporary weapon. This is not old weapon. These are new weapons. So old weapons, new weapons, what's the difference? New weapons are WMD. What's the difference? Huh? To deter attack. Okay, then in terms of killing number of people, do you think old weapons killing more people or new weapons killing more people? Okay, new weapons killing more people. Huh? Okay. In terms of size, old weapons, new weapons, which is bigger? Old weapons bigger. Okay, so these are three things already here. New weapons, smaller in size, smaller compared to old weapons. That's what's different. Number one, smaller in size. Second, moderate cost. But number third, despite it's small, cheaper, but it kills more people. This is what modern weapons are. So, kills many people meaning indiscriminate. In terms of real use, what Oh Hyun-jung said is new weapons, their goal, their purpose, new weapons, purpose is to deter attack. It's difficult to really put them into use. The purpose is to deter. More psychological rather than put it to real use. It's a psychological purpose. 원창. Old weapons and new weapons. New weapons, their lethality. The effect of new weapons multiply. If you have this, what is that?
If you have
uranium. By nature, new weapons, new types of weapons require additional tool, additional tool. To kill more people, you need this tool. What is that tool? Reactor? That is about nuclear weapons. But not only nuclear weapons, but also other types of new weapons also. Rockets. 신성우? Rockets, yes. You need delivery systems. Okay? New weapons need delivery systems to kill more people. Okay? Delivery system, which is called, casually called rockets, but ballistic missiles. You need missiles as delivery system. So you have weapons, new weapons, then you have delivery, then it's a perfect package of weapons, modern weapons. So weapons, delivery system. How many different weapons talking about here, new weapons? Number one, you have nuclear weapons. As new weapon, you have nuclear. Then you have biological weapon. Then you have chemical. So casually, this is actually ABC weapon. Atomic, biological, chemical. ABC weapon. These are new weapons of mass destruction. Weapons of mass destruction. The security problems that arise regarding these modern weapons are mostly what types of security problems? Policy challenges that arise from these weapons of mass destruction, ABC weapons of mass destruction, and missiles also. What kind of policy challenges are we facing regarding these weapons and delivery system? Mostly these weapons are used in the context of asymmetrical war. I don't think these weapons could be used like great power wars. This is not a kind of scenario we have. Scenario we have about these weapons being used is more of a asymmetrical type of war, like a strong power, great power versus small group. This is kind of a situation we are imagining if we have war. So great power versus terrorist group. It's not China-US type of conflict. It's a conflict where the US confronts maybe Al-Qaeda, or the US confronts North Korea. Okay? Because of that asymmetry, why this kind of weapons is not simply a weapon to psychologically deter. In that maybe great power conflict, it's only deterring purpose. Okay, psychological attack. But between this small power versus great power, it's not simply deter. It's a real use. Could be. So the policy challenge today is to make sure these technologies of WMD are not proliferated. That's the focus of these policies. This is the challenge, proliferation. proliferation, because still technologies of these weapons of mass destruction and missiles are limited to great powers. To block it from spreading out to these small, poor countries, that's the policy goal. But how much widespread, how much already these poor countries have, we don't know. We don't know yet. But that's the international agreement. That's how the international society is going in terms of blocking non-nuclear power having nuclear weapons technology, or non-missile technology countries having missiles. That's the goal of international society, the United Nations, IEA. Proliferation. Nuclear weapons. We need to understand a little bit what is nuclear weapons, how is it made. The textbook gives some details. Nuclear weapons has nuclear bomb has several kinds. There are several ways of making these bombs. And there are two ways, according to this textbook. There are two ways of making these nuke bombs, right? One is fission. Nuclear bomb is made through the process of fission process. Fission is like exploding. Fission is exploding. So nuclear energy is produced when some materials explode. What material do we need to make that fission happen? What material? What's the base material of nuclear weapons? Uranium. Uranium is just mineral. Uranium is mineral. Uranium could be found in the mountains. Okay? Found in the mountain, just mineral, right? Could be found in nature. But these rocks, right? Uranium rocks. There are many in North Korea. Uranium rocks. There are many in Kazakhstan. Very huge reserves of uranium in Kazakhstan. Russia has a lot. The Russian mountains, maybe Russian underground has so much uranium underground. Okay? So that's base material to produce nuclear energy. But this uranium alone doesn't mean many things. Uranium alone. You need uranium, yes. But you need to enrich it, so to speak. Enrich. It requires enrichment process. Enrichment. In other words, you need to extract the real essence. Extract real essence. How many times? I don't know, maybe hundreds of times of extraction. It requires extraction to get the real hard essence out of mineral uranium. Okay? So what you get is something called U-235. U-235. So uranium rock, maybe the size of this classroom. This is base material. You begin with that, uranium rock, the size of this classroom, then extraction, enrichment process. Then you might get 1 gram, 1 or 2 grams. right? Highly inefficient process. Highly inefficient process, right? But no matter what, we need the base material, right? No doubt about that. So this kind of process, the bomb made out of this kind of process is called uranium bomb. And the bomb, the U.S. sort of dropped on a couple of Japanese cities, right? World War II, those are uranium bombs. Okay, uranium bombs. Very inefficient, very rudimentary type of bomb. But it killed 100,000 people by dropping, how many they dropped?
2 bombs.
Just 2, dropped 2, killing 100,000, right? The production is inefficient, but killing is very efficient, right? The extraction process costs a lot of money, but once you made it, right? Once you have it, but then killing part, very efficient. Killing process, that's why they want to have it. Killing process, very efficient, right? Because you enriched it to kill 100,000 people. If you use conventional weapons, right? You might need this size bomb. If you use conventional weapons to kill 100,000 people, right? You need this size, maybe bigger than this room size. If you use conventional type of weapons. Dynamite, right? Just conventional bomb, you need huge size, right? That's the difference between nuclear and conventional. And more time. You might need more time, right? That's the science. That's the science of, nuclear weapons. And who made it first? US made first. And US scientists. And that project was called Manhattan Project. US scientists, right? So they turned civilian science into military weapons. That's Manhattan Project. Then there is plutonium bomb. Plutonium bomb. This one, plutonium. North Korea taught us a lot about this plutonium bomb. Actually, North Korea has two programs. North Korea has uranium enrichment bomb. At the same time, plutonium bomb. They have two kinds of bomb program. But the project that was first caught was actually plutonium project. Yongbyon, nuclear power plant. Those are plutonium power plant. But later, another project was caught that was uranium enrichment bomb. So North Korea has a couple of different projects. Plutonium. This textbook doesn't give us details of plutonium, but plutonium, I think, as you saw in one of the in many news programs, how North Korea sort of produce weapons, different process. There is a nuclear rod, right? There's a huge nuclear rod inside some water, right? Then IAEA sort of monitor these, right? Then that nuclear rod, I think out of that, plutonium is produced. If you process that nuclear rod, then you get plutonium. And plutonium, if you accumulate plutonium, plutonium is very difficult to get. Plutonium. Plutonium, just 1 gram, 2 gram, is very difficult to get. But once you get it, if you accumulate those plutonium, then plutonium comprise the bomb. Then the amount of plutonium North Korea accumulated so far, we are just guessing how many bombs, nuclear bombs. According to CIA, maybe 1, 2, or even they guesstimate maybe 5, 6, or even 10. They guesstimate based on how much amount of plutonium North Korea extracted out of this nuclear rot process. So plutonium, I don't know exactly the process, okay? But plutonium itself already very close to bomb. The meaning of you have plutonium, then you have almost the bomb, nuclear bomb. There are 3 ways of killing people through nuclear bomb. Okay? One is blast. First, when nuclear bomb explodes, that's how people die. Second, so nuclear bomb is, the effect of nuclear bomb is several stages. Number 1, blast stage. Then second, heat. Okay, enormous amount of heat comes out of it. Then, more dangerous part is radiation. It comes down through generations, different generations, several generations. That's why a lot of people die. Do you like this stuff, weapons? Do you like it? Wow. Amazing. Wow. Yeah, I see some, when I go to meet American professors, there sometimes women come as an expert on weapons. That's amazing. So she knows all these weapons, the technology, the use of it. It's possible. I mean, women sometimes they get hooked onto these weapons. Issues. You can excel as a woman, weapons expert. So missiles. So like I said, weapons, this WMD, the effect of WMD multiply when it is combined with this missiles technology, delivery system. Because without this delivery system, whatever, new weapons, the use of these new weapons are limited. But if you have missiles, you can launch it. You can launch it so that these weapons travel thousands of kilometers, right? That's the beauty of these missiles. So if you have it, you can attack an enemy 1,000 kilometers away, right? And that's a new kind of threat. That's why America is threatened by North Korea because of these missiles. Without missiles, America is not going to confront North Korea, or North Korea doesn't confront the United States. They confront each other because of this technology, missile technology. North Korea seems to have it. North Korea seems to have both nuclear and this missile. That's why America accepts North Korea as a threat because of this double double technology. Warheads, nuclear warheads, and missiles. Missiles have two types, right? Missiles, there are two kinds. Missiles are classified based on the distance they travel. Distance they travel. Like long distance missiles are called what? Strategic missiles. Long range, long distance missiles are strategic missiles. Whereas missiles that are used in a limited boundary of just battlefield, in the immediate neighborhood, okay, for immediate purpose, immediate use, that kind of missile is called what? Tactical missiles. Tactical missiles. Long range missiles. What's the distance are you talking about? Long range. Strategic missile. How many kilometers, how many miles are we talking about usually? Long range must be longer than 5,000 miles. 5,000 miles. So if you travel longer than 5,000 miles, it is strategic missiles. This is rocket. This is really rocket. 5,000 miles. This is differently called ICBM. ICBM. Intercontinental Ballistic Missiles. So you travel from continent to continent. That's the meaning, intercontinental. ICBM, 5,000 kilometer range. Engkamgalan. These tactical missiles and strategic missiles. According to the textbook, one of these two are useless today. What is it? Second one, which one? What? 심영현. According to textbook, US, Russia, they have lots of them, right? US, Russia has both have lots of missiles. But after the Cold War, they phased out lots of these missiles. What are these? Is it strategic missiles or tactical missiles? Tactical missiles. Okay? Tactical missiles today phased out. Okay? Tactical missiles phased out. So of special interest today, militarily speaking, are short-range ballistic missiles. Short range, between 500 mile, 1,000 mile. It's not tactical, but short range, 500 mile, 1,000 mile range. Short-range ballistic missiles are of special interest, given the nature of war today. So Iraqi war, Afghanistani war, they found these short-range missiles are very useful. So of special interest are these short-range missiles. What are these missiles? Cruise missiles, like for instance, cruise missiles or Patriot missiles. Patriot missiles. These are found to be very useful in modern warfare. 심기영. Oh, you have a very good attitude. Hope that you have very good knowledge too. What's the difference between chemical weapons and biological weapons? Give us examples of chemical weapons, biological weapons.
Chemical weapons, they use chemicals to kill people.
Okay. Like what kind of chemicals?
Gas.
Gas. Okay. Like what type of gas?
Like nerve gas.
Nerve gas. Okay. It makes your brain stop, right?
Yeah.
If you use nerve gas, like sarin, right? Sarin gas that was used in Syria the other day, right?
Yeah.
Syria has a huge stockpile of these nerve gas, particularly sarin gas, right? Do you have any other type of nerve gas? We know. What are other types of nerve gas?
There are many other nerve gas.
What was type of gas that the Japanese religious psycho used in Japanese submarine station several years ago? What was it? Like killing a lot of people there. I forgot the name. I forgot. Do you know anthrax? Do you know anthrax? You don't know? Anthrax. Like a type of powder that if you touch it, then somehow you breathe it, then you die. Some years ago, there were a lot of letters addressed to U.S. congressmen. And there was a guy later found in the remote regions in America where I forgot the name of the region. In remote place, he was sending letters from his, right? Then congressman got the letters because it was addressed to him. Then when you open it, then you touch that powder, right? When you touch it, then you breathe it, then you die. Is it chemical weapon or is it biological weapon? Anthrax, that's biological. That's biological weapon. So that's the difference. Chemical weapon, biological weapon. So there are several other types of biological weapons. Bacteria, right? Biological weapons, types of bacteria, viruses. There was a movie, right? There's a movie that sort of how people die, inhaling, different viruses, right? So if you use it as a war tool, right, that's what you see, right? Virus.
Chloride.
Hmm?
Chloride. It's a chemical weapon.
Chloride?
That was used by Nazi Germany.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's chemical weapon, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, chemical weapon. They dig a hole in the ground
Hmm.
and put a huge amount of people inside of the hole, and then just spill the chloride inside. And because chloride is heavy than the air, it just straight away goes under the inside of the hole, and people just die there.
Mm.
This was one method that Nazi Germany used.
Right. So there must be several, right, chemical materials that could kill people as a weapon.
Yeah, and another aspect is really cheap to produce. But
It must be cheaper. Like, for instance, do you know that a lot of Korean babies, they were dying very quietly when they sleep, because of some kind of detergents. Detergents when you clean up evaporator. That detergent. What went into this detergent? I don't know clearly the chemical component that went into the production of these detergents. Because of that chemical component, not knowing that's chemical, component that could kill people, the government gave permission to sell it, right, to be sold. So there are a lot of babies and mothers mostly, or pregnant women, because they sleep a lot. What they have in common is they sleep a lot. These pregnant women, baby, or women who gave birth to baby, right? They sleep a lot. And then when they sleep, they need this, right? And this machine is cleaned up by these detergents, chemical component. What this chemical does is harden the lung. The lung becomes it becomes like a sponge when you breathe it. So a lot of people, I don't know how many exactly, but a lot of people die. Very dangerous chemical component. We found out later. You saw that in the news, right? In the media. Yeah, that's chemical component. Maybe that might be chloride? I don't know. So these are weapons, and I think America has a special troops devoted to these weapons, right? And Syria was found to have a huge stockpile of this chemical, maybe biological. North Korea has it. And in fact, South Korea has it. South Korea has lots of it. Right? This is what also this textbook says. South Korea has lots of it. Right? South Korea has lots of it. But morally, we are blocked from using it. Right? Morally. But they have it. And anthrax in the United States. How did this guy get to know about anthrax? Because America has a special force to develop it. America has a laboratory. The US Army has a special laboratory that is specialized in developing material called anthrax, the powder. Right? So many countries, they have it, right? They have it. And currently, the US administration and Russian administration, after Syrian affairs, they are discussing how to put a real like enforcement mechanism, whereby countries are really, sort of blocked from using these either chemical or biological weapons. That regulation doesn't exist. What kind of rule we have about banning these chemical biological weapons, which is important? There is a rule, right? There's a rule. The famous one, Geneva Protocol, 1925. Geneva Protocol. That's the international agreement. Geneva Protocol, 1925, is the international general agreement that bans the use of chemical weapons. And the second one, 1992, Chemical Weapons Convention between the US and Russia. Chemical Weapons Convention. This is to ban the production and possession of chemical weapons. And exceptions, many countries signed onto it, but exceptions were, there were several countries that were outside the agreement at that time. Those were Egypt, Syria, and North Korea. What is the most widespread, comprehensive treaty that bans nuclear weapons? NPT, Non-Proliferation Treaty, 1968. NPT, 1968. It was introduced 1968. According to this, there were many countries signed, including North Korea, under which they promised not to produce nuclear weapons. And as part of it, there's a monitoring process. There is a monitoring process by IAEA. So according to NPT agreement, when a country is suspected, a member country is suspected of developing secretly nuclear weapons, then IAEA can come visit the site, okay, and inspect. This is the word they use, inspect. They can implement inspection on the site. This is exactly what happened in Iraq and in North Korea. So that's NPT regulations. In the Iraqi wars, right? You saw that a lot of IAEA inspectors, right, were invited to visit Iraqi site, right? Different places, but then the Iraqi government kicked them out. That's how sort of a conflict began. North Korea, same. IAEA inspectors, right? Visit, then expel, visit, expel, right? Then sometimes they put cameras, right? Monitoring camera there. But then North Korea remove it. This is what is written in the NPT agreement. Page 2 to 3. Let me direct your attention to some of these here. Page 2 to 3 about in the middle. There's a section on arms sales. Okay, there's a section on arms sales. Who buys weapons? In the global south, there's a paragraph beginning with global south. In the global south, military spending varies greatly across countries. The next paragraph, arms imports by states of the global south make up more than half of all arms sales. Next sentence. Who buys arms most? Middle Eastern countries. Within the global south, Middle Eastern countries, they buy most weapons. About half of the South arms imports have been in the Middle East. But what's the recent trend in arms sales? China, India. They are emerging as bigger importers of arms. And who is the biggest seller? The United States. Second, Russia. Then France. Then Britain. Now, the rest of it, go ahead and read. Then quiz number 2 will cover chapter 4, 5, 6 on the 18th. On the 18th. Quiz 2 on the 18th. 2 o'clock here. But again, in 2 rooms, in separate 2 rooms. Separate 2 rooms. And on the 18th, depending on how you answer that question, there will be one question regraded. Okay? There will be one question regraded so that depending on people, maybe new scores will be given to you. So bring the exam on the 18th. Quiz 1. Bring the quiz 1 exam. Then after my TA will have a look at it, then might change the score. Okay, so bring quiz 1. Okay?